So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into this part of the presentation, and I'm going to share with you what is known as the 100-man story. The 100-man story is basically a statistical data gathered by the Census Bureau, and they use this to really determine some things about money and how it doubled and the population and what have you. But in this particular case, what the 100-man story reveals is, and we're going to put it here, called the 100-man story. What it reveals is that out of every 100 individuals, 96 of them, or 96% of all Americans, will reach age 65, and they will be either dead or dead broke. Okay? 3% of that 100 will be financially sufficient, able to live out the rest of their life in retirement without any need or requirement for money. So they're financially sufficient. Okay. 1%, 1% in this case, will be able to not only live out the rest of their life without any worry of money, but they will be able to sustain the life of 4 generations, or lives I should say, of 4 generations beyond them. During this election campaign, there was one person in particular who we affectionately refer to as a 1%er, and that was Mitt Romney. What my job is to do, my job for you is to very efficiently and in a timely manner move you from this 96% to this 3%. And so, would you find it fair that if I can show you how to move out of a situation where you're heading where you will have to work at 65 for some part of or most of your retirement, to where you don't have to work but can live out the rest of your life very comfortably without any real, having to work for the lifestyle that you currently or presently would enjoy, would that be something of importance for you?
Of course.
Okay, very good. And so a part of what I'm going to do is just, again, talk about how we make this transition. So if we think back to the story with the little red wagon, right? This is the setup. The setup is, I got the money. My mother said to me, why don't you save? My response was, why do I have to when I'm going to get it? I get it every day, right? And so the idea is we get a job, the money starts coming in, and we believe that we operate as if that money will continue to flow without ever ceasing. And we all know that there are a lot of peaks and valleys and over a lifetime, at least our working life, where that may not always be the case. So in this case, what we want to do is start talking about how do we make a shift in our thinking, all right, thus beginning to operate in a way that will help us to get to this point successfully, the 3%. When we get to 65, not have the challenge of having to worry about where our money is going to come from, okay? And so one of the things I like to illustrate is what I call the lifeline of money, right? So if we look at lifeline of money, right? Here we go. So when you get money, there's what is called what we would call a earnings, right? And then you have savings, and then you have investments. I'm going to abbreviate that. And then you have luxuries / liabilities. Man out of the room. Okay? So imagine with me, if you will, what 96% of all Americans do. They get that paycheck, they make $50,000 or $100,000. Let's say a person out of school, they get that first job, they make $50,000. What's the first thing they do? They bypass savings, they bypass investing, and they go straight to luxuries and liabilities.
Car.
They get that car, right? They have to get a car in their mind that reflects the salary that they now make. And part of the justification is, I went 4 years through college in the event that they did, or the case that they did, or I worked hard through high school. I've been taking care of my family and, working these summer jobs. Now they're finally making what they consider to be respectable money. And so what do? They go and start looking like something, right? And they buy that car. And what's the next thing they buy? Clothes,
Yeah.
right? What's the next thing they buy? Jewelry, right? You kind of see where I'm going with this, right? And on and on and on. The dinners out, the lifestyle, the dating, the whole nine, travel, right? So so now what happens is, because the mindset is all in living life, lifestyle, right? The cars, the clothes, the jewelry, the traveling, the dating, the shows, all those things, but nothing is being dropped in here. Nothing's being dropped in here, right? And so what happens is, now a habit has been put in place, and now we've got this spending trend in our life. And so what do you think happens when, they got some great experience on this job, and now they go from 50,000 to 75? What do you think they have to do? Upgrade. And so now we get a nicer car, we buy more expensive clothes, and we increase the shiny stuff, right? But we all the time haven't done anything over in here in the investments and savings. And so folks, when I tell that story about, my little red wagon, this is where it all began. That mindset begins here. Now in my case, it may be a little different than with others because I had a little enterprise. But the same thing is what happens, in effect. We don't pay any attention to saving and investing. And part of that is because of this capitalistic society that we live in. We're constantly being bombarded with all the things and the images that we think will make us look successful and feel really good. And so we don't make the savings and the investment contributions. Okay? And so as a result of that, this is the beginning of the leading to that 96%. All right? And so that's what we refer to that as the lifeline of your money, right? Can you see how that happens?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. And so now what I'm going to show you is what I call the wealth line, right? So your wealth line, the way it should work, is like this. Right? We're going to start at 0, and we're going to go all the way over here. This is your wealth line to 100, right? And so from 0 to 25, we're going to call that, we'll put that there, and 25 to 65, right? I'm going to go there. So from 0 to 25, we call that your educational phase. This is your learning phase, right? Your education phase. This is where you've been getting all your knowledge and your experiences from a very young person through your formative years, through your academic career, what have you. You're preparing yourself now to make yourself a viable commodity in the workplace, right? So from 0 to 25, and I'm just using, and it varies plus or minus for some, right? But from 0 to 25 is where you're preparing for your earning life, right? Now, 25 to 65, this period right here, critical. Because from 25 to 65, we refer to this as the accumulation phase. And in the accumulation phase is 40 years. And in those 40 years is where that saving and investment should be happening. Why? Because from 25 to 65 is where you're going to accumulate enough resources to take care of you from 65 to 100. Okay? And so in the accumulation years is where you're going to begin to deal with things like your 401k or TSP or 403b. You're going to look at other types of investments like your Roth IRA, IRAs, precious metals, the likes. Okay? And so some people may become entrepreneurs and get involved in a home-based business, or they may also get involved with real estate investing, those kind of things. But here's where you're going to begin to build that foundation for your wealth. And simply put, I heard someone describe wealth like this: your wealth quotient. Your wealth quotient, and the way you determine that is if you look at all of your assets, if you made liquid all of your assets today, and that came to whatever total it was, and you took your expenses on a monthly basis and divided it into those assets, how many months would you be able to survive? That becomes your wealth quotient. And so if you can imagine to live from 65 to 100 like the 3%ers do, who don't have a need to work, exchange time for money for the rest of their life, that's a lot of accumulation, right? And so this is the area that we really are going to want to focus on. So here, from 65 to 100, we call this the distribution. I'm sorry, let me change that. Preservation. This is where we're going to preserve slash retirement. I'm sorry, slash distribution phase. And it's just what it says. First of all, we want to shift all of our money from the accumulation phase into a preservation account. Some kind of account where we're not looking to necessarily make 1% of interest. We just simply do not want to lose money. We want to protect that money, protect those dollars so that they will allow us to live on a monthly income for the rest of our lives. Rest of life, right? Okay. And so the preservation is now we're going to shift the monies to an account or fund where we want it to be protected and have longevity without any risk of loss or no risk of connection to the marketplace, for the purpose of distributing it on a monthly basis for what is an average of about 30 years, okay, until we transition. All right? And so when we look at this, the education phase is preparing us. The accumulation phase, this is where we're working. This is 40 years of work, okay? And then the preservation slash distribution phase, right? This is retirement. These are the three phases of your money. I never got this lesson. And so when I began to, as a young entrepreneur, began to make money, my whole focus was if we think back to that last graph that I put up here, I went straight to luxuries and liabilities. And so from 23 to 40, I made an average of about $100,000 a year, okay? And so if you add that up, right, it's $1.7 million, right? So from 23 to 40, 17 years, an average of $100,000 a year equals 1.7 mil. Folks, at 40 years of age, I was $88,000 in debt, broke, destitute. How is that possible? Well, as I just showed or demonstrated to you, it's real easy to happen because one of the things that we all know, time stands still and waits for no one. And so that's how it happened. Because I did not put any money in those other two buckets, savings and investing, I ended up at 40 with nothing. Now what I'm going to share with you is how I went from 40 to 44 and a half, let's just call it 45, basically a 5-year period, making $57,000 a year. In 4 years, times 4 years is a total of, let's just call it $6,240,000, right? How I had a net worth of just under $750,000. So with a fraction of the amount of money that I made in 17 years and a fraction of the time, I had a net worth that far exceeded anything close to what I could have ever imagined in those 17 years from 23 to 40. Now it seems really crazy, but when I got here, the difference between 1.7 million and being worth zero after 17 years, and 240,000 and being worth almost $750,000 after 5 years is where the meat and potatoes are of this presentation. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay?